On today's show, do the Orlando Magic control the NBA draft with picks 6 and 11 in this year's lottery? What are Orlando's draft goals this year? How aggressive can we expect the Magic to be with picks 6 and 11, looking to trade up or trade for an established player? What are their biggest needs? It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Next game, how about Nikola Jokic to score more than 26.5 points? What about Bam Adebayo to have less than 10.5 rebounds? How about Jimmy Butler to have more than 6.5 assists? Or what about Jamal Murray to have less than 4.5 three-pointers made? So what is Prize Picks? It's daily fantasy sports, but how does it work? Basically, you pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you go up to 25 times back on your money on any entry that you submit. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available, and Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That's the NBA Finals, NFL, MLB, NHL. They've got you covered for all the action. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that simple. They're safe. They offer fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. And right now, during the NBA Finals, one Prize Picks user will win a chance at becoming a millionaire, but you have to download the app to find out how. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That means if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Magic, Philip Rossman-Reich. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Magic. And Philip, we are at that time of year, the NBA draft right around the corner, 10 days away. So going into this year's draft, what are the Orlando Magic's kind of goals for how to approach this draft this time this year, with kind of how the team took some steps forward this past season and kind of the rest of their offseason goals and what they're trying to accomplish moving forward organizationally?
Yeah, it's really tricky to kind of figure out what the Magic want to do. And obviously they have a lot of power in this year's draft because they have the 6th and 11th pick. And so with 2 lottery picks, there's always the possibility of everyone saying like, oh, can we get this pick? Can maybe package those 2 picks to move up? It's never really clear how aggressive the Magic want to be because they keep everything super quiet. I'm kind of jealous of all those other teams that let everyone know who's working out for them. I have to scour these teenagers' Instagram pages to find out when they're in town. But
reading the IG story tea leaves, you don't have fun doing that? Because I'm in the same boat with the Rockets.
I like to give them their space, and I let Magic Twitter do that for me. It's called crowdsourcing. But no, it's really hard to tell what the Magic want to do. On one hand, their message all last season and heading into this season is level up. Last year they leveled up. They were, on the outskirts of the postseason chase. They had a really strong finish to the season. This year, leveling up would be making the playoffs. And Paolo Banchero has said pretty much every time he's talked to the media, our goal is to make the playoffs. We talk about it on our team, text thread, on our team group chat. We're making the playoffs next year. That seems to be the message that the players are sending out. And so if that's the case, the goal in this draft should be to come away with some shooting, come away with guys who are going to help this team make that step, maybe even trading one of those picks for a veteran player instead of another rookie because they were the 3rd youngest team in the league last year. On the other hand, the front office says nothing. And this very well could be their last sort of bite at the apple. And so in some respects, it also feels like this is a draft for the Magic to be aggressive, to try and maybe trade up, make sure they get the young player, the player in this draft that they really like outside of Victor Wembanyama, who's probably just completely off limits, but to make sure they get the player that they feel completes the picture and allows them to take, maybe not a step this season, but a big step forward moving forward. And so it's not really clear what the Magic are going to do, but they have a lot of options ahead of them.
You talked about some of that aggressiveness there, right? And what we might see the Magic try and do. So let's operate under the assumption there has been some reporting around the NBA landscape that you might see the Magic try and package picks 6 and 11 to move up into that top end of this year's lottery, somewhere in that 3 to 5 range. What name stands out to you as the name that, you would be interested in the Magic taking if they were able to kind of take that leap, put those two picks together and get into that top 5 of this year's draft?
I mean, I think the guy that definitely stands out, and even before this draft process, before we knew how good the Magic were going to be, I think we all said to ourselves, Scoot Henderson is exactly who this Magic team needs. A guy who can attack off the dribble, can stop and hit mid-range jumpers, which, his shooting numbers from outside the perimeter aren't great, but he has shown plenty of ability to hit from the mid-range and just be kind of a ball-dominant guy. They have Paolo Banchero who can work the low post and create a little bit for himself. Having another kind of big point guard almost would be a real big benefit. If it's not going for him, I really do think the Magic are a team that really is kind of in on the Thompson twins. Both Amen and Asar are versatile wing players. They can play up and down positions. They can play make with their size. Amen Thompson as a 6'7" point guard, that just screams Orlando Magic. We want big, tall players who can handle the ball, who aren't typical, who are more skilled players than their height at this point. To me, those are the 3 players that I think the Magic would be trying to trade up to make sure that they get if they're trying to trade up at all.
And at this point, I mean, you're almost guaranteed at pick number 6, at least, you're guaranteed probably at least one of Asar or Cam Whitmore, depending on what direction the Detroit Pistons decide to go at number 5. Maybe there's some weird, movement in the top part of the draft, and another maybe Amen also falls a little bit lower, although that's probably a bit more unlikely at this point. So if the Magic were to, keep both of their picks, right? You don't see the aggressiveness, you don't see them try to package them together. What are some of the names that you're keeping an eye on around pick 11, assuming they keep both of them and they just add a couple young guys back to this young core?
Yeah, the big thing that I've told my listeners throughout this whole draft process, if when you have 2 picks, you can kind of reach with one pick and then be safe with the other one. But the thing that I've told my listeners throughout this whole process is no matter what, I want the Magic coming out of draft night with a shooter. They are, 27th in the league. They were, I think, 23rd, 24th in the league in 3-point field goal percentage, 27th in the league in 3-point field goal attempts per game. The math is really, really hard in this league if you're not shooting threes. And look, Denver shot fewer threes than the Magic did this year. They're also the most ruthlessly efficient offense in the league. You can make up for it if you have Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray running your show. So it's not like you need to take a ton of threes, but this Magic team has to be able to take more threes. The math just doesn't work. And so, if I'm Orlando, I'm really focused at 11 on Grady Dick and Jordan Hawkins from UConn. Grady Dick from Kansas, Jordan Hawkins from UConn. They're arguably the 2 best shooters in this draft, kind of widely considered at least 2 of the 3 best shooters in this draft. A lot of people like Chet Howard from Michigan as well. But if I'm Orlando, if I come away with one of those 2 players, I have a guy who's going to be able to take a lot of threes, is pretty much going to come right out of the box ready to shoot NBA 3-pointers too, which I think is really important. Those are guys that are going to be able to contribute to my team and make my team better immediately. Even if they make rookie mistakes on defense, still getting shooting is like the big imperative for this Magic team. And it's really, I know I just mentioned Scoot Henderson, Amen Thompson, Asar Thompson, who are all not considered good shooters, but this Magic team really has to put a premium on shooting in free agency, in all the guys that they add to this team that aren't kind of home run swings.
And so do you think that kind of plays into at least their draft philosophy as far as, right, balancing the need for talent versus fit on their roster and kind of spreading the love, I guess, between those 2 picks, right, where maybe pick 6 is more the bigger, the bite at the apple, a star, best player available, versus pick 11, which could become, hey, we need this piece or this skill on the roster, so we're going to go for the guy that best provides that here at pick 11.
Yeah, and I think that's just generally how a lot of non like pure rebuilding teams probably handle these draft picks. Is they say, hey, we can take a big swing. Orlando essentially was in this position 2 years ago. They took they were prepared to take a big swing on Scotty Barnes at 5 in that draft. Jalen Suggs fell to them. I think everyone can kind of consider Jalen Suggs part of that top group at the time. It's maybe obviously changed, but Jalen Suggs was their star swing. Franz Wagner was the safe pick. The draft reputation on Franz Wagner coming out of Michigan was, this is a guy that's going to connect your team, help them be better. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes. He's not going to play outside of himself. nobody really had a clue that he was what he has been his first 2 seasons in the league, where, he's a guy that the Magic probably consider a future all-star at this point. I'm sure, no offense to Golden State Warriors fans, and they took a big swing on Jonathan Kuminga. I'm sure they're kicking themselves not going with the quote unquote safe pick with Franz Wagner at this point. He would have been really good for them. Like it's scary how good he would have been. And honestly, like in that draft process, I'll admit to my mistake here. I thought Franz Wagner was going to be good no matter where he ended up. I didn't think he would be successful on a rebuilding Magic team. I thought he'd be better on a team like Golden State, where he just kind of helped fill in gaps for a team like that. That was kind of the philosophy when the Magic made that draft 2 years ago, and obviously worked out for them. And so I do think that's part of the equation here. Even if the Magic, say, with 11 want to swing for Bilal Coulibaly, another wing who very much fits the Magic profile. He's 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan, very, very raw, but a great athlete, already a pretty solid defender in the French league, which you're playing with Victor Wembanyama, and Wembanyama has been nothing but effusive of his praise and how important he's been for their run to the championship series. If the Magic go for Bilal Coulibaly, take their home run swing there, there are options for them to either maybe trade back a little bit, honestly, from 6, or just go ahead and take your guy with like a Taylor Hendricks, maybe a Jarris Walker, or even an Anthony Black. There are some kind of safer picks with more defined skills that they could take at 6, so they can take a home run swing a little bit later with, Bilal Coulibaly, maybe Derek Lively from Duke. I think Derek Whitehead would be a little high at 11, but the kid's got talent too. So, there are a lot of options around.
And one of those options, you mentioned this pretty early on, the idea of, adding veterans, right? Maybe trading for a more established player with one of those picks, or if not, maybe both of those picks. Who are some of the names on your radar if the Magic look to trade out of the draft, either completely or by just using one of those picks to maybe go grab an established presence to bring into their young core?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still tough to get a read of the trade market room. An idea that I've kind of had in my head for a little bit is, maybe trading back from 6 to 8 I think Washington's at 8, trading back from 6 to 8, and maybe grabbing like a Daniel Gafford. I think the Magic really need a backup center. They need someone that's going to be able to start for Wendell Carter, because Wendell Carter, I think the most games he's played in his career is 65. You got to count on him missing 15 games a year at this juncture. So, I don't know if our Locked On mock draft is out yet, but I did a similar move in our Locked On mock draft, trading out of the draft from 11. Just fair warning, I would do that mock draft very differently today than when we recorded it. So I disavow anything that Locked On mock draft does in that draft. But there are going to be names. The market's going to wiggle free, and Orlando is certainly a team that, at least once the books flip over to July, is a team that has some cap room that could absorb some salary too and be facilitator to get some of those veteran players that maybe need to be moved around for some big trades, because by all accounts, this is going to be a big summer for offseason moves, with so few teams having salary cap room and a lot of teams trying to get under that second apron. Perhaps the Magic could be a team that could get very active on the trade market a little bit later on as well.
What are the Orlando Magic's goals going into this year's NBA draft? How will they approach the draft? Will they make those picks? Will they be aggressive and trade up, trade out? You're going to have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Magic. Philip, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Thanks for having me on, as always.